my beautiful and shredded scholars. Today we're going to talk about my philosophy on fighting and self-defense. I think being fit is great. I think having strength and speed and stamina, they're all incredibly important to being a healthy, well-rounded man. However, defending yourself and the ability to strike is essential for self-esteem. If you want to have confidence, you have to be competent at fending off an attacker. Now, let me preface by saying this. The best way to win a fight is to avoid the fight. However, if you find yourself in a situation where that is absolutely not an option, knowing how to defend yourself, knowing how to strike first and foremost is going to be essential to your survival. Now, there's a few things that I want to talk about, but first and foremost, I'd like to talk about throwing a proper punch. Now, you'll notice I'm not wearing any gloves, because if you're in a street fight, you're probably not going to be wearing any gloves. And when I'm training on the bag, let's say it's your first time ever hitting the bag, wearing a glove and having all that padding and wrist support can give you a false sense of security. It can make you feel like you've got super strong wrists and perfect technique if you don't have perfect technique. When we throw a punch, we want to connect with the first two knuckles. And what I mean by that is it's these two, the big one in the middle and the first one. So these two fingers, these two knuckles, that's what we want to hit with. If you hit with your pinky, you will break your pinky. If you hit with your ring finger, you might break it, and it's certainly not going to feel good. So when we practice throwing punches, we're not going to go super heavy, but what we want to get in the habit of is learning what it feels like to connect properly. When I throw that punch, my first thought is digging these two knuckles into the bag, and my wrist is straight. I'm not punching like this. My thumb isn't in my hand. I'm wrapping my thumb around the outside of my knuckles, squeezing it tight and keeping my wrist straight. So when you throw that punch, your wrist is straight, you're landing with those two knuckles. There should be a straight line for all that shock to be absorbed. So when we throw punches on a bag and we don't have big, fluffy, padded gloves on, you're going to feel whether or not you're hitting the bag properly, which I think is an extremely valuable tool for establishing proper technique early on. It's better to get strong with good technique than it is to overcome bad technique. If you ingrain bad technique by starting with gloves, when you move over to just bare knuckle, it's going to feel a whole lot weirder when you're hitting the bag. You're going to have to correct those imbalances. Even when you're throwing a hook, let's say I want to come around and I want to throw a leading hand hook, I'm still striking with these two knuckles here. So once we've established the proper technique and you've practiced light, and I'm talking just barely tapping the bag. Once you've established the habit of hitting properly, then we can start looking at combinations. Another thing that's extremely important early on is to get in the habit of keeping your hands up. Now, when it comes to keeping your hands up, the best way to practice, in my opinion, is just to jab and move. Jab and move. What you're gonna get is you're gonna develop the ability to think compartmentalized. So no matter what, whether my feet are moving, whether my hands are hitting, I'm always reverting back to a posture where my hands are protecting myself. So I can shield, I can block with my arms, I can take blows. I would much rather take a blow to my forearm than to my face. Another cool thing about beards is that they will cushion the impact of a punch. It's something that goes back to our history as men. Men with beards are seen as more dominant and aggressive because they can fight better. Now, you could grab a beard, yes, but as far as cushioning a blow, they are extremely powerful. So when we're getting in the habit of keeping our hands up, we're going to develop good technique early on. And I would practice with both arms in both stances. A lot of people get into one stance. So you'll see my left foot's forward right now. A lot of people only train with their left foot forward, and they never train with their right foot forward. We don't want to be like that, because the best way to counter is to know both positions and to be able to fight in both positions, because you might be fighting someone who's orthodox, but you might be fighting someone who's southpaw. And what that means, if your right foot's forward, you're fighting southpaw. If your left foot's forward, you're fighting orthodox. It's a stance. Knowing how to switch between those is going to make it harder for your target to pinpoint where you're going to be and to telegraph your next move. Telegraphing is the movement of your hips, shoulders, and arms that can be seen. And the reason it's important to understand how your moves are telegraphed is because if we want to escalate the situation as quickly as possible, as violently as possible, we want to understand what moves are going to be least telegraphed. So let's say I know that this is a fight that I absolutely can't avoid. Maybe I'm backed against the wall, maybe I'm cornered. Either way, from this position, I'm saying, look, give me some space. I need you to back up. I don't want to fight. Leave me alone. From here, this is a very seemingly passive position. However, it's not actually. When I'm in a position like this, it might seem as if I am unprepared, I am open to attack. However, I am ready to strike. What you'll notice is before people will throw a punch, generally speaking, they will telegraph their intention. So if you've seen people fighting on video, street fights I'm referring to, not boxing matches or cage fights, they'll either pull their pants up and settle their stance, or they'll roll their sleeves up, or they'll buck. Bucking is a really good way to tell someone's really about to throw a punch. If they're like getting here, they got their hands in their pocket, they're setting their pants up, whatever it may be. The pants are the biggest giveaway in my opinion. If someone is up in your face talking crap and they push back and they step like this, at that point you shall hesitate no further. At that point you're going to throw the most difficult to block punch, a straight jab. Now what you'll notice is this punch comes from a position of de-escalation. I'm not threatening in this position, but it comes out in a way that it's not easily telegraphed. So if you were to look at my shoulders, let's say I'm going to throw a hook, all right? If I'm swinging, this is a lot of movement through my hips and my torso that they can detect and throw up their guard. But if I'm standing here and I say, look, man, I don't want any trouble. I need you to leave me alone. And he pulls his pants up, that punch right there is going to stun him. Now, what we want to do with that initial jab is we want to hit him either in the nose or in the mouth. Ideally the nose, because if you hit someone in the nose, it's going to either you're going to break their nose, or at the very least, their eyes are going to start watering. So it's going to make them a less threatening attacker. That stun is not usually where people get knocked out. People usually get knocked out by the punch that they're not expecting. So there's a chance that your initial jab, you say, look, man, I don't want any trouble. There's a chance that that initial jab is going to knock him out, but I doubt it. and you should always be prepared to follow up with a flurry. And what I mean by that is, at the very least, you want to throw a cross. Now, it's called a cross because what we're doing is we're coming across the body with a straight punch from our rear hand. Now, what I mean by rear hand is my back foot is my right foot right now. My right hand is to the rear of my body. So when I throw this punch, I'm gonna get a little bit more power because I'm dropping my hips into it and extending forward. So let's say we're in that situation. I'm saying, look, I don't want any trouble. What I'm going to do is immediately after I throw that initial stun, I'm like, look, dude, leave me alone. From here, when I throw that stun, I'm dropping the cross. At the very least, you want those two punches. The stun is more than just a stun. When you throw that jab, you're gauging your distance. So if I'm here and I'm up close, I might not have room to throw a jab, at least not a powerful one. What I would do in this position is, if you're up real close and you're like, look, dude, I need you to back up, give me some space, I don't want to fight. What I would recommend in this position, if you were just so close that you can smell the dude's breath, okay, you can tell what he ate last, you need to throw an elbow at the beginning, okay? Elbows are great. If you can take this part of your forearm and land it on their ear, you're gonna throw them off balance. Our equilibrium, or our balance, is determined by our inner ear, okay? So if you're able to hit someone really hard with a lot of power, like an elbow in the inner ear, you're gonna stun them quite well. So it's accomplishing the same objective that our jab does, except if we're here and I'm saying, look, I don't want any trouble, I need you to just leave me alone, back up, give me some space, and they telegraph their intention, at that second, once you see their intention, they reveal their true colors, hesitate not to throw a jab and follow up with a flurry. Now, ideally, what you want to do is you want to spam, okay? Imagine it's like a game of Mortal Kombat. Now, Mortal Kombat is technically a law in some states where two civilians can declare Mortal Kombat and have a fist fight in public with no reprimand. There's no consequence. Nobody's pressing charges. If two people declare Mortal Kombat, they can go at it. But you think of the video games like Mortal Kombat, and there's the stereotype of people just spamming the buttons. If we're in a situation, a violent situation that could potentially be life or death, you don't want to sit back and calculate and box around and like you're Muhammad Ali, okay? You're not going to be dancing around. Once you realize that your life is in danger, and once you realize that you must act accordingly, do not hold anything back. Practice your flurries. So when we start out, whether you're up close to where you have to throw an elbow and back up to get some distance, or if you're already far enough away that you can start with a jab, I want you to practice a flurry. So what that means is you're swinging for glory, okay? You want to practice body shots. I think it's extremely important to just wail on the bag and know what it feels like to keep your guard up while you're in close and hit the bag. Now you're gonna notice that the bag is more dense down here than it is up there. So be careful. Don't just go out and buy a punching bag and immediately start smacking the crap out of the bottom of it bare knuckle. You're gonna hurt your wrist. It's not gonna be pretty. Start off light. Learn your technique. Learn how to gauge your distance. Learn where you can punch from. Learn to move. So when you're moving around the bag, it's going to give you a tactical advantage. Moving is going to disorient your enemy, especially if they're stunned from the initial flurry. So let's say we're in a situation. I have done all that I can to verbally de-escalate, and the situation's only getting more intense. They telegraph their intentions. At this point, I am going to throw some punches. Now, you don't want to just throw and stay here and then come in for a flurry. It's not the best idea, okay? What you want to do is when you throw that initial flurry, you want to, A, bring your guard up. So I see a lot of people just throw like this, and then they move around. You see people in street fights that are like trying to bait people with their head. That's stupid. Don't do that. You're probably not that quick. You're probably gonna get hit, and it's not gonna turn out well. When you throw that initial flurry, pop the guard up, okay? So obviously I want the element of surprise. I'm gonna start off with my hands out. I'm de-escalating, but also I know the distance that I can pop someone in. So I'm moving around the target as the fight progresses. So that initial flurry is going to be 2 solid punches straight on, okay? I'm going for the nose. You could go for the throat. Either way, you want to hit where you're intending. So a good way to practice this is to pick a spot on the bag that you see and to aim for it. So let's say this little E right here. You see it says Elite. There's an E at the bottom of this golden rectangle. I'm gonna pretend that that's someone's nose, okay? That's close to my nose. So if I'm fighting someone that's relatively the same height as me and I'm going for that position, I'm gonna practice at very low intensity. I'm gonna practice just getting a familiarity of where my hands fall on the bag. Developing that coordination is going to be extremely important when it comes down to a situation where your stress is elevated. You don't want to have to think about whether or not your punch is going to be on the right spot. You want to be able to throw and know that you are going to land where you want it to land. The last thing you want is to surprise someone with a strong punch and completely miss the bag, okay? Because now you're off guard, all your momentum is throwing you off balance, and you're open to attack. Find somewhere on the bag, whether that's in a body shot. So let's say if I'm aiming for body shots and I want to hit right here on this tee, I'm going to practice loading up my punch. Now notice, when you load up a punch, I'm not going and coming into it, okay? I'm keeping my guard up. So whatever direction my attacker's in, I'm using my arms as a buffer between me and that attacker. So if I'm throwing a body shot and my goal is to land right here with my right knuckle, when I step forward for that body shot, my arms stay up. So if he throws something I can hit, I can slip, I can move back, whatever it may be, you want to have your guard between you and your opponent. So let's say I'm here and I know I want to throw a body shot, okay? When I throw that body shot, I'm stepping, keeping my guard, and I'm twisting the hips. That's where all your power comes from. If I'm just here and I go, like, that's not going to do anything, okay? You could be the strongest man in the world. This is not going to be a good punch. Now, when you practice enough and you learn how to use your hips, your punches all come from the ground up. Build it from the ground up. It's like a house. You have to have a solid foundation if you want a beautiful roof. When you start your punch, it starts in the feet. It starts in the ankles, the knees, the hips, the back. Then it comes into the shoulders and your arm is whipping. So you're not punching like this, okay? When you throw a good hook, there's a whip involved in it. So your body's here and it's whipping across. The last thing to come is your fist. So when you throw a body shot, you want to make sure that A, you're keeping your guard, you're not letting your hands drop, you're not dipping your head, you're not looking down. You always want to be looking at your opponent. And from here, you want to turn into it. Now obviously that's a little slow-mo, but I want to give you the example. So we're here, and I'm stepping into it, dropping my center of gravity. I'm loading up my hips, my ankles, my knees, and I'm winding, okay? The arm stays until I'm ready to follow through. And then it's back. I'm not letting my guards stay down. When I land that punch, I'm reloading. So if I'm throwing a cross and it's a powerhouse, okay? I'm trying to drop the guy. I'm not going to go like this. I'm going to immediately bring my hand back. Now, you don't want to just punch your opponent. You want to punch through them. That's where you're going to have the power. Visualize going through the bag, but immediately, once you have expended all of your energy, pop it back. So let's go back to the original flurry. You're in a situation, you can't de-escalate it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna say, look, man, I need you to leave me alone. I need you to back up. Just give me some space. It's not worth it. There's no need for this. You're acting irrational. He telegraphs his intention. At that point, throw a flurry. Do something, okay? Get out of that situation. Don't let him throw the first punch, okay? Regardless of what anybody has told you, you don't want to be the one to get hit first. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Life's not fair. It never was, and it never will be. Use what you've learned in this video. Practice on a punching bag without gloves. Learn how to connect. Learn how to throw a punch without telegraphing. So if I'm throwing a punch here and I don't want it to be seen, that is a great way to do it. Once you throw that punch, you've gauged your distance, you've brought your guard up, you're ready to go to work. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that this does not encourage you to go out and get in random fights. Don't start fights. It's stupid. It's childish. Use this as a way to practice, to learn proper technique for throwing punches. Keep moving. Practice different combos. And over time, you will develop the confidence in knowing that you can protect yourself if you absolutely have to. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you have a blessed day. If you're interested in my free fitness guide, it's called Centurion Strength. Check it out in the description down below. Otherwise, show your support on the channel by leaving a like, dropping a comment down below, subscribe to the channel for more. Turn on those post notifications so that you get notified whenever I upload, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.